Johannes Kneifel says he's seen the light. In a few months, he's due to begin working as a pastor at a church with the Union of Evangelical Free Church Congregations in Germany. It will represent a radical change in the direction of his life, a change that he's proud of.
Especially when you consider my background, that I used to cause people harm. Now I'm glad that I'll be seen as someone who's doing something good for people, and that people acknowledge that.
This is the world Kneifel left. Hatred, violence, drunkenness. As a teenager, the prospective pastor was a neo-Nazi skinhead. He considered his mother a cripple and his father a failure. Kneifel led a double life. During the day at school, he was a smart, hard-working student. At night and on weekends, he was a violent racist who defined himself through his hatred of foreigners. He was proud to call himself a radical German. Today, he says that gave him something that his seriously ill parents never could.
Shame played a big role in my family, and the sense of pride that I found in the skinhead scene was a kind of salvation that finally gave me something to feel good about.
Right-wing pride? His former school principal, Eckhard Nüring, thinks he knows why the young man drifted into the skinhead scene.
I'm convinced that Johannes had the wrong friends, people who could influence him more than we could guide him.
One role model in Johannes' skinhead life was Marco S., a local neo-Nazi and drinking buddy, and Kneifel's partner in a gruesome crime. In August 1999, Kneifel and Marco S. went to this house. It was the home of Peter Deutschmann. Viewed by some people in town as a hippie, Deutschmann repeatedly spoke out against the local neo-Nazis. Johannes and Marco wanted to shut him up.
When he didn't open up, we broke the door down and went in, and then the situation quickly got out of hand, and we got violent.
They beat Deutschmann and left him seriously injured in his own home. Deutschmann later died in the clinic. On a visit to the unmarked grave where his victim is buried, Kneifel says he now sees Deutschmann in a different light.
He was a person who refused to accept that young people there tossed around neo-Nazi slogans, and he confronted them.
After the attack, Johannes Kneifel was sentenced to 5 years for aggravated assault resulting in death and sent to Germany's largest juvenile prison. Psychologists there concluded he had serious behavioral disorders and questioned whether he could really renounce violence. Other prisoners came from immigrant families, and Kneifel got into fights. But before long, living with people he considered foreigners started to change his views.
After a short time, I began to have a lot of contact with foreigners, but the prison officials still saw me as the neo-Nazi, despite the fact that I spent most of my time with foreigners.
Dieter Kulks was the prison chaplain while Kneifel was serving a sentence. Kulks was there when the young prisoner broke with his neo-Nazi past. He's convinced that Kneifel's change of heart is sincere, something not everyone is prepared to believe.
I always saw Johannes as someone who didn't know how to deal with his guilt. And that led him to ask who he was guilty of hurting, and who could forgive him that guilt. And that was when he started to have questions about religion.
After his release from prison, Kneifel's search for a new life led him to the church. Instead of right-wing propaganda, he began reading the Bible. Instead of pursuing his old dream of becoming an engineer, he decided to become a pastor. Today he's busy with seminar studies and gaining practical experience. He's also written a book which he describes as a painful process in dealing with his past. Critics accuse him of self-promotion.
No one sees me as a hero, but some may see me as a kind of model. And what I'd like to say to people who may be in similar situations is that you can get out of that and start a new life. So I do see myself as a role model, even if that makes some people angry.
His is a story of downfall and a new beginning. But his escape from the neo-Nazi scene remains the exception. Johannes Kneifel says he now wants to find work addressing current social issues, helping youths that society has given up on, who otherwise wouldn't get a second chance.